The Gangetic Plain, flickering with fireflies and monsoon thunder, forms the backdrop of our story, North India around 1500 BC. It's a world of swelling rivers, fertile black silt, and villages strung like beads from the foothills of the Himalayas to the edge of the Vindhyas. Over 10,000 settlements cluster along the Yamuna and Ganges, hunters, barley farmers, and the first ironworkers shaping a land on the cusp of epic change. Priests sing hymns to Agni and Indra beside glowing hearths, casting barley into flames as both ritual and practical act at the end of each long day. Bronze sickles and battle axes flash at the edges of clearings, rivers churn with bamboo rafts, clay pots, and the laughter of children spiraling in the current. Every summer, the monsoon transforms the plain with flash floods, erasing old boundaries and sending deer and wild cattle pounding across the new marshes. Tribes, living in clusters of 100 to 500 souls, move to higher ground, erecting mud-walled huts topped with rice straw thatch. Glimpses of horses appear in rock art. The swift animal, brought from further west, is a symbol of rising power and prestige. Evenings settle to the click of board games and the drone of bees over millet fields, the rhythm of rural life, unbroken for thousands of years. But beneath this rustic calm, larger political currents swirl. Chieftains begin to consolidate dozens of small tribes into proto-kingdoms, exchanging livestock in smoky assembly halls. 5 great rivers give this land its name, Sapta Sindhu, the 7 rivers, and together they form the arteries of ancient India. Every few years, distant rumors drift in, tales of new gods, shifting alliances, and mysterious victories far to the west and north, where mighty Bactria and Elam once reigned. By 1500 BC, a world is poised on the edge, a world about to write the first lines of its most enduring tale. Cows low in their enclosures as the night thickens. In the cool pre-dawn haze, the future Kuru dynasty is already stirring, preparing to leave its indelible mark upon the dust and glory of this ancient plain. Hastinapura rises along the Ganga ca 1200 BC, a city of clay ramparts, brick watchtowers, and walled granaries spanning 12 square miles. The Kuru dynasty, forging alliances among dozens of tribal chiefs, installs itself as supreme arbiter of ritual and war. In this city, where the population quickly climbs past 100,000, the clang of smiths and the drumming of horse hooves announce new ages. Chariot warfare. Crop yields, rice, millets, wheat, swell the granaries by 2,000 metric tons each year, feeding both the elite and their growing military retinue. Within council halls ringed by painted columns, venerable elders debate laws, land boundaries, and taxation. Vedic priests, Brahmins, codify the great horse sacrifice, or Ashvamedha, which becomes the supreme demonstration of royal legitimacy. The Kuru kings enforce standardized weights and measures. Coins of copper and silver change hands in busy markets. At the edge of the city, seasoned warriors train with composite bows and iron-tipped arrows, prepping for annual contests that draw thousands of spectators from the wider region. Already, Hastinapura's influence pulses down the river corridors, absorbing lesser kingdoms into vassalage. Bards memorize lineage lists that stretch back 7 generations, painting the Kurus as divine stewards entrusted with upholding cosmic order. The dynasty's presence suffuses every ritual: birth, death, marriage, binding clans together in a web of fealty and myth. In dusk's gold light, city gates creak open. Merchants, travelers, and emissaries bring fresh currents of news, rumor, and ambition. A warm monsoon breeze stirs the palace courts of Hastinapura, c. 1150 BC, as fate begins to weave its knotted threads through the Kuru bloodline. King Vichitravirya's death without an heir leaves chaos. So Satyavati, the queen mother, summons her secret son Vyasa, sage and sagemaker of kings. 2 queens, Ambika and Ambalika, bear children by Vyasa's touch. Ambika's son is Dhritarashtra, born blind. Ambalika's is Pandu, pale as the moon, but destined to rule. Dhritarashtra's wife, Gandhari, conceives by divine boon. After 2 years of pregnancy, her hard-fisted frustration delivers not a child but a lump of flesh. The court astrologers and priests swarm with anxiety as Vyasa divides the flesh into 100 earthen jars. Each is sealed and buried. Over 2 years, the jars yield the first Kaurava brothers. Duryodhana emerges on a night when wolves wail and thunder shakes the city. Outside, the population reaches a new high of 120,000 as laborers, artisans, and priests settle in the swelling capital. Across the palace, Kunti, Pandu's chief wife, invokes sacred mantras and the gods themselves to have sons. She calls the wind, fire, and divine thunder, eventually bearing Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. Madri, Pandu's second wife, receives twin sons, Nakula and Sahadeva, thanks to another mythical blessing. In 5 years, the shining future of the Pandavas is set. In private nurseries, nurses mark celestial portents, secretly fearing that the birth of 101 princes, 100 for Gandhari, 1 for Kunti's side, signals not blessing, but calamity for the Kuru realm. An era of rivalry, divine intervention, and deadly ambition is born in these shadowed halls, as the cradle-echoing cries of children foreshadow the coming storm. The palace courtyards of Hastinapura, c. 1130 BC, thrum with childhood games, seemingly innocent, yet lined with the steel of rivalry. Teachers Bhishma and Drona, both legendary warriors themselves, oversee the daily regimen. Archery at dawn, spear practice at noon, chariot drills by dusk. Young Bhima, towering and uncannily strong even at age 8, is already hauling boulders and wrestling bull calves, while Duryodhana, his Kaurava cousin, matches him in every contest except brute might. Their first serious feud nearly turns deadly as Duryodhana, outwitted and seething, attempts to drown Bhima in a palace pool. Guards intervene just in time, but suspicion lingers like river mist. Arjuna emerges as the ace archer of the training hall, splitting bamboo stalks at 50 yards and outdrawing the other 99 Kauravas by age 10. The noise of their sparring spills into the city streets, where local children mimic the prince's moves with sticks and pointed reeds. Among these youthful frays, seeds of jealousy are sown. Duryodhana plots with brotherly whispers, egged on by resentful confidants. Draupadi, not yet in the scene, is already spoken of amidst palace gossips, her fame as a beauty and political prize rippling from the distant south. Festivals bring temporary truce, with Kuru and Pandava cousins parading 4 abreast through the capitals, yet rumors of cheating or favoritism stoke further disputes. In these short-lived peace offerings, Bhishma and Drona glimpse both hope and foreboding. Every harmonious song at the banquet masks a tension that only sharpens with time. The future of India's greatest epic is now shaped in shadow and sunlight, in games that will soon spill blood instead of laughter. Cold dawn mists roll over Himalayan foothills c. 1120 BC, as Pandu and his queens withdraw from Hastinapura's bustle after a fatal accident in the deerwoods. Banished by self-imposed exile, Pandu seeks atonement among thick rhododendron groves and shivering pines, a king stripped of crown, feasting now only on humble forest fare. His wives, Kunti and Madri, keep the hearth with wild rice and berries, relying on barter with barter-traveling tribal groups for salt and herbs. Years pass. Their tiny court swells by 5 sons, each conceived through a miraculous boon Kunti once received from sage Durvasa. She invokes Yama for Yudhishthira, Vayu for Bhima, and Indra for Arjuna, 3 boys born of gods and raised beneath cedars and snow. Madri, pleading for her share, invokes the twin Ashvins and brings forth Nakula and Sahadeva on a spring morning after a late frost. Pandu, racked by remorse and desire, struggles to keep his ascetic vows. The Hamirpur forest where they dwell, called Satasringa in old records, shelters fewer than 50 people, mostly hermits and exiles, while gangs of wild elephants roam the tangled canopy in search of bamboo. The exiled family participates in old rituals beside mountain springs, offering clarified butter to the fire and singing Vedic hymns as icy rain taps the leaf shelters overhead. Tucked under sheepskin and straw, the children hear tales of the dynasty's origin and of the world's first king. Each year, Pandu's beard grows longer and his health weaker, and the children's bodies harden with forest living. No whiff of palace intrigue reaches them now, until one morning catastrophe returns. A chill wind courses through the forests of Satasringa, c. 1110 BC, the day Pandu's tragic story closes and the future pivots once more. Yielding at last to forbidden longing, Pandu embraces Madri and falls as lifeless as a cut sapling, felled by a curse that spares neither wisdom nor kingly birth. Madri, overcome by grief and guilt, enters the funeral pyre in ancient rite. Her ashes merge with Pandu's in a ceremony watched by only a handful of weeping forest dwellers, and Kunti, now widowed and stripped of all but her will. Kunti, now alone, takes charge of her 5 sons, their ages ranging from 7 to 12. Wrapping them in coarse wool, she leads the family's return to Hastinapura, a journey of weeks along muddy animal trails and swollen rivers. The city at this time, blooming above 130,000 residents since their departure, has become even more politically fraught. gossip and suspicion follow the Pandavas wherever they pause. At every roadside inn or riverside sandbar, travelers discuss the suspicious timing of Pandu's demise and Madri's suicide, airing doubts that inflame the capital's whisper network. Within the palace, tensions churn as the Pandavas bow before Bhishma, their revered granduncle, and the blind Dhritarashtra, now king in title and in the subtle mechanics of power. Some courtiers welcome the orphans warmly, but others, led by Duryodhana's sullen faction, see rivals and threats in every step the Pandavas take. The young princes inherit not only their father's legacy, but also his enemies and the precarious balance of a kingdom edged on the knife of destiny. It is the new century's dawn, c. 1100 BC, and Hastinapura's great colonnades echo with the whir of arrows and clash of steel. Into this crucible enters Drona, the master archer from Panchala, summoned to train the Pandavas and Kauravas in every art of war. Drona's curriculum is rigorous, dawn-to-dusk routines of bowmanship, sword dueling, horse command, and advanced tactics. Archers shoot at targets set 50 yards away with accuracy sharpened by daily repetition. Chariot drivers steer two-horse rigs through mazes of stone pillars, their wheels screeching on hard-packed clay. Drona, his black beard streaked with gray, singles out Arjuna as his most gifted student. Within 5 years, Arjuna can hit a spinning disc in the dark using only the sound of its whir. A public tournament is called to test the mettle of all the princes, a spectacle attended by thousands, with dignitaries from Magadha, Kashi, and far Cambodia crowding the stadium. The opening ceremonies see over 5,000 spectators packed into bamboo stands, straining for a glimpse of the skills on display. Duryodhana and Bhima wrestle amid roaring applause, their contest ending with splintered staves and torn tunics. Both emerge bloodied but proud. Then Arjuna dazzles the crowd with impossible archery feats, splitting a lotus in half mid-air, and then replicating the shot blindfolded at Drona's command. But the climax stuns them all. Karna arrives, radiating charisma and demanding a duel with Arjuna. Tension sizzles as Karna's origins are questioned, yet he matches Arjuna shot for shot, kindling a rivalry that will one day ignite the world. Bhishma and Drona exchange worried glances. What began as simple education now turns lethal in its consequences. Apprenticeship yields to ambition, and the future blinks with danger in every eye turned to that sunlit arena. One stifling summer, c. 1095 BC, a shadow falls over the outer city of Varanavata, where a royal festival is due. Duryodhana, bristling at the Pandavas' popularity and emboldened by his uncle Shakuni's cunning, hatches a plot laced with fire and subterfuge. 200 hired laborers work for 3 weeks, mixing resin, lac, and oil into the very walls and beams of a new palace, while artisans decorate its surface with gold inlay and lotus carvings, an irresistible invitation for the unsuspecting Pandavas. The newly exiled brothers, their mother Kunti in tow, arrive to find feasts and garlands awaiting them. But the walls seem to sweat and tremble in the choking heat. As moonless nights pass, Vidura, their secret ally, quietly warns them. He commissions a miner to dig an escape tunnel half a mile long from the rear wall to the Yamuna's muddy bank. When the time is ripe, the palace is ignited with a torch. Flames devour the structure in hours, sending plumes 100 feet into the sky. The Pandavas and Kunti, crawling through the rough tunnel, emerge soaked and gasping at the river's edge. In the following days, local villagers and the city elite gather before a smoldering ruin. Charred corpses, unidentifiable, left as decoys, convince all of Hastinapura that the princely heirs have perished. At the royal court, grim-faced elders and mothers in mourning don black robes while the population erupts in grief and veiled celebration. Duryodhana's control of the kingdom at last seems secure. Yet far downstream, the Pandavas slip away into anonymity, bearing with them nothing but clothes, memories, and the heavy knowledge of betrayal. The ancient world turns a sharper edge. Now, survival means invisibility, patience, and trust in fate's deeper workings. Across North India, c. 1090 BC, the dead Pandavas wander as anonymous Brahmins, blending into crowds at dusty pilgrim camps and village markets. They live on alms, grain, onions, coarse salt, guarding their identities, clutching charity bowls and whispering coded secrets by lantern light. Weeks turn into months, the family shrinking its retinue until only a handful of loyal followers remain. Yet destiny stirs far from Hastinapura. In the south, King Drupada of Panchala calls for a Swayamvara, a contest to decide who will win his daughter Draupadi's hand. Stories race like monsoon winds. Drupada's pride is legendary. and his feasts draw over 1,000 warriors from kingdoms as far as Vidarbha and Gandhara. On the day of the contest, a 100-foot-long bow stands massive and gleaming, its bowstring thick as a child's wrist, and a revolving metal target spins above an oil pool. No king, prince, or general can notch the weapon, until Arjuna, veiled in the ragged garb of a mendicant, steps forward. With a single motion he lifts, strings, and fires 5 arrows through the wheel's spokes, striking the hidden fishmark with unerring force. The crowd erupts. Draupadi smiles as garlands are placed around Arjuna's neck. Victory is theirs, but a surprise follows. Kunti, misunderstanding, insists her sons share everything, leading Draupadi to become the shared wife of all 5 brothers, a union marked by both ritual and shock. The Pandavas' identity is revealed to the entire court. Drupada, their old ally, openly acknowledges them, and word races north to Hastinapura. The crowd, a tapestry of foreign diplomats and local notables, witnesses both the start of a singular dynastic marriage and the return of lost princes. Tensions crackle as allies realign. The world will never see another wedding or alliance like this. From jungle to jeweled city, Indraprastha rises on the banks of the Yamuna, c. 1083 BC, the year the Pandavas are granted a barren tract as their kingdom. What looks like punishment swiftly becomes a marvel. Over 7 years, laborers, masons, and artisans, 15,000 at peak, clear forests, reroute 2 tributaries, and build a planned city with wide avenues, fish-filled tanks, palaces of quartz and pearl, and lotus ponds that shimmer in the tropical sun. Food supplies, drawn from doubled rice harvests and tributary vassals, flow in by ox cart. Population booms to 80,000 as Indraprastha's markets burst with sandalwood, pottery, and woven cotton. Royal halls glitter with gold-plated beams and marble, echoing with music, feasts, and debates on dharma and power. Architects combine the best designs of Kashi, Magadha, and Panchala, stepped courtyards, subterranean granaries, and ingenious waterworks, while gardens yield roses, guavas, and fig, feeding a feasting court of philosophers and visiting monarchs. The iconic Maya Sabha, or magical hall, with optical illusions and seamless crystal floors, wows every foreign dignitary who crosses its silver-inlaid threshold. Indraprastha marks the Pandavas' recognition as global peers. Neighboring rulers send both tribute and spies, while the capital's population grows by several thousand each festival season. 16 major sacrifices, culminating in the Rajasuya, the imperial rite attended by 500 chieftains, raise the brothers to near-divine status. All the while, the world watches for dissent. Victory is fragile, and old enmities remain unresolved, lurking within the city's bustling walls. Here, under sun and oil lamp alike, the next phase of this ancient saga is written in brick, blood, and ambition. Under flickering torchlight in Indraprastha's Maya Sabha, c. 1075 BC, the mood turns treacherous as invitations for a friendly game of dice arrive from Hastinapura. The city's radiant splendor is eclipsed by mounting dread. Yudhishthira, bound by custom, cannot refuse the invitation delivered by royal envoys. He and his brothers are received by Duryodhana and Shakuni, who preside over an arena packed with 500 courtiers, merchants, and notables, all eager for spectacle but ignorant of the plots simmering beneath the laughter. The dice game spirals quickly. Shakuni, sly and eagle-eyed, employs loaded cubes carved from bone, rolling streaks of 6s and 11s as the courtiers' whispers grow into open agitation. Stakes escalate, jeweled necklaces, land grants, the Maya Sabha itself, then the freedom and dignity of the Pandavas. One by one, they lose everything: palaces, chariots, riches accumulated over a decade, all in a single evening. Draupadi, dragged into the hall by her hair and humiliated before the gasping assembly, becomes the living symbol of the Pandavas' fall, her sari only saved by divine intervention. A final throw seals their fate: exile for 13 years, 12 in the wilderness, the last hidden under disguises, on pain of death should they be exposed. Streaming out through the Maya Sabha's darkened doors, the brothers and Draupadi trade silks for deer-hide cloaks and royal feasts for foraged roots. The once glorious city that welcomed them with festival lights now morphs into a memory veiled by grief, while across the Ganges Plain, Duryodhana revels in complete though deeply unstable victory. Dense monsoon rains sweep the edges of the Khandava forest, c. 1069 BC, as the Pandavas begin the longest exile in Indian legend. Stripped of every title and comfort, they traverse a patchwork of wilderness, groves of teak and bamboo, wild sugar cane by silty rivers, and the primal hush of Himalayan foothills. Their party shrinks to 50 faithful retainers, including sages, tribal companions, and a few loyal cooks. Foraging becomes a ritual, as wild rice, leafy greens, and once-in-3 weeks game provide scant sustenance for a family raised in marble halls. Fires coax warmth from sodden wood as night descends. Even Yudhishthira, once served in gold lattice armor, sleeps on woven grass mats. Each month brings fresh company. Rishis wandering from the Vindhyas, yak herders offering dried milk, and even tribal kings seeking advice on devotion and justice. Arjuna, driven by visions of future war, undertakes solitary asceticism, journeying northwest to the mountains for 4 years, returning armed with divine weapons, celestial bows, god-crafted armor, magical missiles. News trickles back. Hastinapura swells to 250,000, emboldened by Duryodhana's rule, while Indraprastha's orchards run wild, temples gathering dust. The Pandavas travel through sacred groves, Naimisha, Kamyaka, Dwaita, spending entire seasons cloaked by trees older than dynasties, their calls for rain echoing in empty hills. Draupadi endures the harshest fate, defending her honor from lowly robbers and vengeful demigods. Bhima slays wild Rakshasas, his club felling monsters that menace villages along the Godavari. Through hunger, storm, and loss, the brothers' bond hardens, tested by pain and fanned by longing for reclaiming Dharma. In every flickering campfire, the epic's next, most crucial lines are forged, patient as roots and as persistent as returning monsoon. It is late autumn, c. 1062 BC, when the Pandavas enter the prospering Matsya kingdom, blending into Virata's bustling court in their final hidden year of exile. Each brother adopts a humble disguise, Yudhishthira as courtier and dice champion, Bhima as royal cook, Nakula as horse trainer, Sahadeva as chief cattleman, and Arjuna, strikingly, as Brihanala, a eunuch dancer who teaches grace and warcraft to Princess Uttara. Draupadi, veiled and reticent, becomes Sarandri, Queen Sudeshna's lady-in-waiting, avoiding courtly suspicion while enduring daily risk. While Virata's palace teems with 7,000 staff and a population of nearly 35,000, the disguised Pandavas navigate intrigues and looming threats, hiding their skills and immortal blood. Virata's son, Uttara Kumara, swaggers through the courtyards, desperate for martial glory. The peace, however, is delicate. Neighboring kingdoms suspect the exile's presence, and in the 12th lunar month, a coalition of Kaurava-aligned forces, spanning over 10,000 chariots, cavalry, and archers, marches on Matsya in search of cattle and, in secret, the hiding heirs. Desperation forces revelation. Arjuna, clutching a concealed bow in the palace armory, emerges to rout the invaders, unleashing celestial weapons and single-handedly breaking the siege. Uttara, the princess, is saved. Her brother boasts of having the mythical hero as his driver and protector. Virata's gratitude is immense, and in the court's brilliant torchlight, the Pandavas' true identities are revealed, shocking allies and enemies alike. Their 13-year odyssey is over. Matsya's musicians and town criers spread the news. Distant Hastinapura braces for a war that feels as inevitable as the coming flood of spring. Fog curls low over the Kurukshetra plain before sunrise, c. 1059 BC, as armies converge for the greatest war in Indian memory. The battlefield, spanning more than 20 square miles, is a patchwork of tents, siege wagons, and standard-bearing elephants. 1.6 million warriors assemble by dawn, drawn from every corner of the subcontinent. On the Pandava side stand warriors from Panchala, Matsya, Chedi, and Kasi. Opposite them, Duryodhana commands the might of Gandhara, Anga, and Kalinga, 22 major kingdoms in all. Conches and kettle drums thunder across the plain, announcing the start of battle. Troops arrange into phalanxes, foot soldiers holding double-edged swords, archers standing 8 deep, and cavalrymen armored in bronze. Chariots, over 18,000 in total, roll over the dewy grass, their banners fluttering with clan symbols. Royal elephants, some armored in copper plates, form a slow-moving but terrifying vanguard, each able to trample a dozen men underfoot. The opening day sees the sky blackened by 1,000,000 arrows, the ground soon bleeding crimson as death tolls mount in the thousands by the hour. Battle rages from sunrise until dusk. Fires light the night as torchbearers search for the wounded amid toppled chariots and shattered shields. Scribes keep frantic tally, 7,000 dead on day 1, 9,000 on day 2, each sunrise greeted by the grim work of burning, burying, and mass mourning. In every war tent, hopes tighten and tempers flare. Both the Pandavas and Kauravas steel themselves against the endless churn of violence, knowing only catastrophe or glory awaits when their banners finally fall. Midway through the sanguine crucible, days 1 to 6, c. 1059 BC, the Kurukshetra field becomes a shifting theater of alliances and annihilation. Generals command multi-tiered battle arrays. The Kaurava host deploys the vanguard wedge, 500 elephants trampling past fallen shields as infantry skirmishes draw bright red lines across the plain. Each day, battlefield casualties peak between 8,000 and 11,000, darkening the Yamuna with the blood of sons, fathers, kings. As dusk falls, couriers in swift chariots speed between tents with secret messages. On day 3, King Shalya of Madra, torn by oaths, is lured to Duryodhana's side, swelling Kaurava cavalry by 10,000. Yet the tide ebbs and flows. Drupada, once a rival, throws his 6,000 spearmen behind the Pandavas at dawn on day 5, bringing thunderous applause from their battered camps. The alliances rewrite map and morale alike, each morning heralding betrayals and reunions by torchlight. At intervals, generals halt the bloody contest for parley, only for new feuds to detonate with the next clarion blast. Bystander armies, tribes from Abhira, Matsya, and Yadava lands, swing loyalty in exchange for tribute, their banners shifting with rumor and gold. Long ranks of bodies mark the field, the air thick with the stench of burnt armor and rotting horseflesh. Kurukshetra, once sacred ground for peaceful gatherings of sages, groans under the weight of tens of thousands lost. By the 6th night, fires flicker above mounds of the dead, while the living steel themselves for even bloodier dawns to come. Early morning light glimmers over Kurukshetra on day 10 as the war pivots, the fall of Bhishma, the grandsire, c. 1059 BC. For 9 days, Bhishma leads the Kaurava forces with terrifying skill. From his chariot he fires arrows at blinding speed, felling hundreds daily and sowing panic among Pandava ranks. Each day's tally grows, 2,000 dead the first day under his shock tactics, increasing to 6,000 as allied regiments falter. The Pandava generals, battered and desperate, convene at night for council, their faces hollow in the lamplight. Krishna proposes a radical gambit. Shikhandi, born female, will stand between Bhishma and Arjuna to break the code of chivalry binding the elder's hand. On day 10's dawn, the armies mass behind their banners, tension rippling through their serried ranks of footmen and armored elephants. As Shikhandi leads the advance, Bhishma lowers his bow, refusing to fight a woman by his ancient code. Arjuna, seizing the opportunity, launches a hail of arrows, over 100 in under a minute, turning Bhishma's body into a living pincushion. The battle pauses as Bhishma collapses atop a bed of arrows, blood pooling into the trampled turf. For hours, commanders on both sides weep and stand vigil. The count of the dead rises to nearly 10,000 before the day is done. Silence settles, a rare, fragile calm before the renewed storm, and in Bhishma's near-mortal agony, both hope and horror strike the hearts of every watching soul. On the battlefield's 13th sunrise, c. 1059 BC, Drona assumes command of the Kaurava host, a general unyielding and unstoppable. His tactics are brilliant, slicing through the Pandava ranks with rapid chariot raids and clever feints that leave up to 10,000 slain each grim day. Drona's famed Chakravyuha formation, a spiraling phalanx, pins the Pandavas across the central plain, forcing even Arjuna into desperate hour-long duels at noon under searing sky. Pantry stores empty as quartermasters struggle. The Kaurava supply trains, once feeding 80,000 men daily, now face piles of unburied dead and the risk of famine. In the camps, word flares like wildfire. Kunti, mother of the Pandavas, secretly reveals to eldest son Yudhishthira that their fierce rival Karna is her long-lost child, born to her before marriage and cast away in shame. This revelation, striking on the eve of the 15th day, stuns the brothers and muddies the lines between friend and foe. Meanwhile, Drona presses on without mercy, personally slaying Drupada and over 30 elite Pandava soldiers in a single afternoon charge. The tide only turns by ruse. A rumor spreads that Drona's son, Ashwathama, has been killed. Struck by sorrow and caught off guard, Drona lowers his weapons. Drishtadyumna, Drupada's son, seizes the moment and beheads Drona in the encroaching twilight. As the sun sets, a river of blood carves new channels into the dust-choked ground. Over 100,000 dead by the war's 15th sunset, and both armies teeter on the brink of collapse. On the 17th day of battle, c. 1059 BC, thunderclouds loom as the final duel between Karna and Arjuna ignites. The plain has shrunk to a wasteland of shattered standards, blood-soaked pits, and less than a tenth of the original warriors, roughly 160,000, remain from the 1.6 million at the war's outset. Karna, golden-armored and battle-worn, mounts his chariot for the ultimate contest, his every action shadowed by both fate and the secret of his Pandava lineage recently revealed. Raindrops begin to spatter the field as the two archers exchange a flurry of arrows, each one finding an unerring mark, a display that stuns even the most hardened veterans. Midway through the duel, Karna's chariot wheel becomes mired in the thick, churned mud. While Karna struggles to free it, Arjuna, urged on by Krishna, his charioteer, summons a divine shaft, an arrow as bright as lightning and as silent as regret. He looses the fatal shot as Karna's back is still to him, fulfilling prophecy even as the heavens open to drench the carnage below. Karna's body collapses on the ground, and the sound of rain becomes louder than the groans of the dying. Lightning rips the sky as both armies stagger back, losing their greatest champion and the last measure of hope for a bloodless victory. The day closes on bodies lit by fire and storm, soaked banners, gleaming arrows stuck in the mud, and the legacy of a rivalry as old as division itself. Less than 80,000 warriors will see dawn on the war's final day. Night deepens over Kurukshetra, c. 1059 BC, as Ashwatthama unleashes vengeance in the war's most dreadful episode. With the Kaurava host shattered, barely 10,000 remnants clinging to scattered camps, Ashwatthama, seething with grief and denial after his father Drona's death, infiltrates the Pandava encampment under cover of darkness. His blade, forged anew with ritual fire, arcs through tents and shadows. Princes, captains, and foot soldiers are slaughtered in their sleep, their cries muffled by the night wind and the relentless rain. In just a few hours, over 100,000 lay dead, brothers, sons, and generals alike. The slaughter is indiscriminate and nearly silent. Only the mewling of horses and crashing of iron against bone rise above the storm. Chariots are overturned, camps ignited in pockets where torchlight flickers, and the bodies of children and elders are found heaped before morning. At dawn, the full scale of the massacre becomes visible. Corpses blanket the muddy ground, twisting through hundreds of campfires snuffed out in terror, the smell of blood and sodden canvas choking all survivors. Every tent flies a white flag as the Pandava ranks, reduced to a mere handful, stagger through ruin without words. The river of Kurukshetra runs red for miles. Jackals and scavenging birds descend in droves, echoing the howls of gods and ancestors alike. It is a night remembered for centuries in grim choral songs, a devastation that renders every victory hollow and signals the true end not only of the war, but of the world as it was. Dawn struggles through a thick veil of smoke and mist, c. 1040 BC, illuminating the aftermath of the war on Kurukshetra's devastated plain. The land is transformed into a graveyard. Mounds of corpses, the bodies of men and animals alike, lie unburied as vultures and jackals descend in flocks to scavenge. Of the original 1.6 million warriors, fewer than 10,000 now draw breath, less than 1% survive, and many of those are wounded or shattered by grief. The air itself is sour, thick with the scent of burnt armor, spilled blood, and the dull tang of endless funeral pyres struggling to consume so many dead. The Pandavas, victorious but hollow-eyed, move among the carnage. Women in Indraprastha and Hastinapura grieve for sons, fathers, and husbands lost. The fabric of joint families and indeed society itself begins to unravel under the weight of so much death. Just a handful of the great houses endure, Prajyotisha, Matsya, and a remnant from Magadha, while scores of minor lineages vanish from the annals forever. In the Ganges and its tributaries, ritual baths take on new meaning as the Pandavas, led by Yudhishthira, wade into the water to atone for blood spilled. Omens haunt the survivors. Eclipses, ill-boding howls by dark, and swarms of locusts feasting on the exposed flesh of the battlefield. Mourning rituals fill what's left of the ruined courts as fire cremations continue day and night, each pyre another plea for order and peace in a world seemingly abandoned by the gods. The once fertile golden plain is now choked with ash and silence, a monument to human pride, violence, and fate's inexorable turning. Within the battered halls of Indraprastha, c. 1038 BC, Yudhishthira dons the crown, yet his coronation feels more curse than triumph. The realm he inherits is haunted by loss. Only 15% of the pre-war population survives, nearly 1 in 6 of every household lost to the war, plague, or famine that sweeps the Ganges basin. Fields left fallow by conscripted or slain farmers yield barely half their usual harvest, and warehouses fill not with grain but with the complaints and petitions of the starving. The survivors cluster into broken families, many led by widows or aged patriarchs, their sorrow echoing through festival nights now subdued to murmurs. Governance, once a shared ritual among vibrant elders and ministers, degenerates into grim debates over rebuilding, resource allocation, and the justice due both victors and the vanquished. The courts of law, overwhelmed by orphan petitions and boundary disputes, tremble under new burdens. Insurrections simmer as dispossessed nobles and disbelieving priests question the Kadamba order. Each public festival becomes a memorial. Every wedding or naming is laced with sadness for unreturned brothers and lost cousins. Yudhishthira, plagued by nightmares and omens, a black dog at his door, famine in his dreams, turns increasingly to ritual, debate, and acts of charity to wash away the guilt that clings like his royal robes. Indraprastha, crowded and beautiful just decades before, now seems a haunted city where every echo and shadow holds a memory of what was lost. A new era dawns with the Ashwamedha, royal horse sacrifice, c. 1036 BC, as Yudhishthira seeks both atonement and expansion. The ritual horse, gleaming gold and bedecked in scarlet, is released to wander unchallenged across the vast subcontinent. Its path dictates the bounds of empire as rival kings either submit by treaty or fall in border skirmishes. Armies led by Arjuna and Bhima sweep through river valleys and across high plateaus, conquering, exacting tribute, or forging new alliances that swell the Pandava banner's reach. Within 18 months, the Pandava domain stretches from the Himalayan passes near Gandhara in the northwest to the deep forests of the Deccan Plateau, a span of over 1,500 miles and a dozen major river basins. Records speak of 8 vassal kingdoms brought under direct rule, and new taxes, measured in tons of grain, herds of cattle, and gold plate, rejuvenate the battered treasury that once fed the war. The returning armies process through Indraprastha's gates with spoils and elephants, their wounds salved by victory laps and feasting. Yet, even as the ritual concludes, the final sacrifice attended by more than 2,000 Brahmin priests and thousands of citizens, the land's scars remain. Famine flickers at the margins, rebuilders labor against relentless monsoon setbacks, and the heroic age feels shadowed by uneasy peace. A golden stallion stands as both victor and warning. Rule, even when God blessed, is as fragile as the line between dharma and disaster. In the coastal heart of Saurashtra, c. 1032 BC, the age of gods dims with Krishna's passing in the sacred sands of Prabhasa. Krishna, once the diplomatic spine holding rival kings in check, falls to a hunter's stray arrow, mistaken for a deer as omens blaze in the sky. At the same moment, a great earthquake and surging tide swallow the golden towers of Dvarka. Within a single day, the city's 30,000 citizens scramble to high ground, leaving only legends and scattered relics in the sea foam. With Krishna gone, old alliances unravel with astonishing speed. Hastinapura's vassalage over rebellious tribes fractures, and outlying provinces from Uttar Pradesh to Malwa erupt in uprisings. Over 8,000 warriors slain in 10 months as famine and lawlessness mount. News arrives weekly of fiefdoms seceding, claiming divine sanction to break from imperial Pandava rule. Highways once patrolled by chariot guards become hunting grounds for bandits and exiles. The Pandavas, grief-stricken and isolated by both loss and guilt, recognize the age has ended for good. Yudhishthira abdicates, renouncing both the throne and his royal trappings as he persuades his brothers and Draupadi to leave behind all titles and embrace the deathless path of renunciation. In the last lamp-lit court, echoes of Krishna's flute fade, a signal to the world that the old divine order has given way to the uncertain tides of history. High in the snow-capped Himalayas, c. 1030 BC, the Pandava brothers and Draupadi begin their final ascent, leaving behind throne, city, and all material bonds. Wrapped in rough wool and leather, the 5 princes and their queen trek through icy winds and thin air, past forests of deodar and sheer cliffs shining with blue ice. Days of grueling travel shrink their party with every step. Draupadi collapses first, then Sahadeva, Nakula, and finally mighty Bhima. Each falling to exhaustion, old wounds, or the unhealed sorrows of the past decade's losses. The greatest warriors of their age, once hailed on fields of a million, are left as silent shapes on windswept snow. Yudhishthira alone persists, walking with head bowed, accompanied by a lone black dog, an incarnation of Dharma, through avalanches and blinding blizzards. He resists each temptation, golden citadels dangled by gods, the promise of joy or reunion, all refused for the sake of duty's long arc. In mythic memory, this ascent signals something larger than any king's reign, a passage beyond mortal suffering toward moksha and transcendence. Villagers along the lower trails whisper about the royal procession, recalling years later how the brothers passed like spirits into the cloud-thick passes, never to be seen again. The snow keeps their secrets. When the mountains finally settle into the spring melt, all that remains is legend, the tread of lost feet receding into the silence of the world's rooftop. In the centuries following these epical events, c. 400 BC, the Mahabharata's memory transforms into living scripture. Sage Vyasa's monumental verses, over 100,000 shlokas, are recited aloud in assembly halls, temple courtyards, and beneath banyan trees, echoing from the Punjab to the lush southern coasts. Monks and scribes in nearby Taxila carved the first lines onto birch bark and palm leaf, sending manuscript copies along trade roads and river barges to Kanchipuram, Ujjain, and beyond. The story, shaped by generations of poets and priests, becomes the thread tying an entire subcontinent together. Villagers in the Western Ghats and fishermen on the Bay of Bengal alike hear the tale's core of war, kinship, betrayal, and destiny. Palm leaf manuscripts multiply in stacks within the libraries of Nalanda and Varanasi. By 200 BC, legend credits over 5,000 reciters and dozens of regional recensions, each adapting episodes to local heroes, dialects, and gods. Artistic renditions cover temple walls, great mural cycles of Bhishma on his arrowbed, chariot-riding Krishna, and the towering city of Indraprastha dazzle generations of worshippers and travelers. By the time of the Mauryan emperors, grand public readings draw crowds numbering in the thousands, and kings consult the Mahabharata as a manual for rule and wisdom. The epic shapes not only the memory of dynasties, but also the eternal questions of ethics, duty, and fate, its verses humming with the heartbeat of India itself. 2,000 years after the last arrow is loosed, the dust of Kurukshetra still clings to every word.